My name is David Johnson. I am the general manager of a company called LEOcrowd. We are a reward-based crowdfunding company, and we'll be talking a little bit about ourselves at the end, but tonight is more a generic training on how to create that awesome pitch in crowdfunding. But we thank you for taking the time. I always like to start with the fact that time is the most precious commodity that we all have. So we really do appreciate you spending some of your time with us. We do not take that for granted, I can assure you. So tonight is very much what we call a workshop webinar, where we want to ensure that all those who have taken the time to come on to the call can actually get some benefit. So how can this next 35, 40 minutes, how can it benefit you? We're going to cover a number of different things, but personal to you, one of these points may be pertinent. It may be you want to know how to launch a dream business. Maybe you have a project that's a real make a difference in people's lives type project. It might be you just need to raise some funds for an existing business venture or project or SME business that you have currently. So if you fall in that category, then there'll definitely be benefit for you tonight. It may be you're wondering how can you raise money without giving away equity, and that's certainly something that a lot of small businesses and startup businesses are questioning. What are the different routes of raising finance? There's a bit of a craze today towards the equity model of crowdfunding, and all too often some people overlook the advantages of the reward model, and we're going to be looking at that. And if you're in that position where you're wanting to raise some money, you're just not sure what's the best way of going about it, again, this workshop will definitely benefit you. It may be you already have your project, you've already decided to do a crowdfunding raise, but perhaps you're wondering what are the elements that make a pitch absolutely fantastic, make it that awesome pitch. Again, if that's the category you're in, just want more information about crowdfunding and how to have a good pitch, then again, the workshop will benefit you. Above all, we do want to encourage people to take action and actually start their campaigns, preferably on our platform, but even if it's on a competitor platform, it's actually bringing business and driving the industry, and we're all about just making this industry bigger, and whatever the outcome of the call, we are quite relaxed with. So LEOcrowd has how would you describe it? It's really a raison d'etre, I sometimes call it, or a reason that drives us, and that is about setting entrepreneurial spirits free. And when you look at the world of small businesses, startup businesses, there's a couple of really stark observations. Number one, you may ask the question, what holds people back from starting their own business or project? And we probably all know people, I certainly know a lot of people who talk about wanting to start their own business, they've got an idea, but just never seem to get round to taking that step to launch. Another amazing question is, why do so many businesses fail in the first 2 years? Staggering statistics around the world are 90, 95, 96% of all new businesses, startup businesses, fail in their first 2 years. I find that incredible, given that entrepreneurs are the people that take the risk. They sometimes leave a secure job or they give up a career to go and launch their own business. So they take all the risk and they employ staff, and the staff get paid first. If there's anything left at the end of the month, then the entrepreneur gets their money. So they take the risk, and yet the vast majority fail in their first 2 years. So that got us to thinking, well, why is that? And is there anything that we can do about that? So when you look at the market currently, one of the main reasons for business failing, and for some not even starting, is a lack of money. That lack of funds in the early startup stage of the business, and that is a huge problem in the business world today, probably more so now almost than ever. But there's also a lack of skills. There are some businesses that start with a great product, with a great person perhaps leading it, but that one individual or the small team don't have the expertise required to grow the business. They perhaps don't understand the social media marketing, which is very much a new craze and a very fast-moving marketing sector today, and if you're not keeping on top of it, you could spend a lot of money, a lot of time trying to market yourself and get nowhere. There might be no financial clout in the business. There might be no real financial planning and strategizing within the business. So those skills can affect the startup business. And I think lack of money, lack of skills are the two main reasons why so many businesses fail. And we feel we're in the business of trying to change those figures, bring those figures down so that more and more entrepreneurs can launch their businesses and have success. So tonight we'll cover just very briefly a couple of key elements on the agenda. We have the crowdfunding market. We have the elements of an awesome pitch. We have a quick sort of review of what we've done, and then we're going to look at some next steps. So, Jeff, is there anything popped through yet there on the chat box or anything yet? Anything I've covered so far that anyone wants to quick clarity on?
No questions at the moment, but if anyone does have any questions, feel free to type away and I'll reply to them through the chat box.
Excellent. Okay, so let's just look very briefly at the crowdfunding market. Crowdfunding is literally changing the way that businesses raise funds. If you're on the webinar tonight and you're already aware of the industry, then you'll know how fast it is growing. But if you're sort of new to the industry, I encourage you to go and just do a little bit of research on this phenomenon called crowdfunding, because it literally has exploded onto the world scene in the last 7, 8, 9 years. Not entirely a new concept. Some would argue strongly that the Statue of Liberty in America was really the first crowdfunding project, where the French sent over the Statue of Liberty, but they didn't send a base to actually set it on. It's actually the New York Globe, I believe as it was then, launched an appeal to mainly New Yorkers, but also wider afield to that, and something like 200,000 people pledged $150,000, and thousands of people gave a small amount each, and that raised the funds to build the base that the Statue of Liberty now stands on. So that's an example of crowdfunding. So why has it become so popular? Well, traditional finance, bank lending as we once knew it, is now more difficult than ever. It used to be you could go to your bank manager, you could build up a bit of rapport with him, he would look at you maybe based on your family background perhaps, if he had the knowledge of your previous generations, and local bank managers very much made decisions on lending. Now that's all changed, especially after the credit crunch. We have a system now which I like to call the computer says no syndrome, where people just input a whole bunch of details. You almost have to prove that you don't need the money before they'll lend it to you. But at the end of the day, someone sits behind a computer, and more often than not, they'll simply press a button, and it'll be the computer will decide whether or not the lending actually happens. And that's stifling business, it's stifling growth, it's stifling new ideas coming to the market, it's certainly stifling entrepreneurs. So that is one of the drivers behind crowdfunding, because crowdfunding brings together projects with people who are willing to back them, and that's really the magic of crowdfunding. Now, there are different models in crowdfunding. It's really important, especially if you're new to the industry. On the webinar tonight, it's really important you understand the different models, because some people read an article in a newspaper or online, and it's very specific to a certain model of crowdfunding, and then they get confused when they're introduced to a different model. So there are different distinct models. They're all part of crowdfunding, this $34 billion industry in 2015. But you'll see different types there: reward, equity, lending, and charity. And the best way of describing this is if you take the red line down the middle, to the right of the red line where you have equity and lending, that's really the majority of the market in total around the world. However, that's very much heavily government regulated. It's investment, so you're either investing in a company that's lending money, or you are investing in equity in businesses via a crowdfunding platform. So that's on the other side, if you like, of really heavy regulation in the UK, with very strict FCA guidelines if you're involved in that market. On the other side, you have reward and social causes or charity. And this is not investment, and I want to keep stressing that in case there's any confusion. The reward model, charity model, it is not an investment. People simply pledge to back projects in exchange for a tangible, predetermined reward. And we'll discuss that in more detail, but again, I can't emphasize enough that reward and charity are not investments. The advantage of reward model, as we're going to highlight again tonight, is that you can actually raise your funds without having to give away equity. And that's very, very important for a startup business that's looking just to maybe get that initial seed capital to get the business growing. So reward model and how it works. Very simply, on the right-hand side of the screen, you have your project creators. This is people who have their project, they have their idea, they have their social cause, they have an existing business they want to raise some money for, and they come to a crowdfunding platform which facilitates the transactions. And on this side, you have a whole bunch of people, we call them the crowd, and these people, if they like the project, are prepared to pledge money to back the project. Now, reward-based is what's referred to as all or nothing funding. So if a target is set, and there's a predetermined date, a start date and finish date, if the target is not met, then the project fails, and no funds go to the project creator. It's only if the campaign is successful. So initially what happens is funds are simply pre-authorized. There's nothing taking from a backer. They're simply pre-authorized. We tend to use Stripe, one of the biggest third-party providers there are in the world today, and they pre-authorize the funds. If the project's successful, they collect the funds, send the funds on to the project creator, and then a percentage goes to the platform. So the funds are all handled third-party, as the way it should be, and different currencies are eligible for different platforms, and we'll discuss that later. Now, I sometimes throw this out of the table when I'm doing a workshop, and we had a workshop in London there on Thursday night. We actually did a Facebook live stream for about the first 15 minutes of the workshop. That's actually been viewed over 10,000 times now online just since last Thursday. But I asked a question there, and the question was simply, what do eBay sell? eBay is obviously a phenomenal business model, phenomenal concept, huge success, world-renowned business. What do they actually sell? And different people in the room had different ideas, but one guy got it very quickly. They don't sell anything. All eBay does is facilitates people who want to sell product with people who want to buy product. They don't manufacture anything. They don't make anything. They don't actually sell anything. They simply facilitate. They're a platform that facilitates transactions, and that's exactly what crowdfunding is. The crowdfunding platform simply bring together project creators with project backers. So last slide, I'll bring Jeff in if there's any questions on that section. Before we get into the actual training, I always like to discuss this, because this is probably the biggest flaw in the crowdfunding industry, where people who come on to platforms have an unrealistic expectation of how the funds are going to arrive in their bank account. And I call this the reality check slide. So if you're on the call tonight and you have a project and you're thinking about launching, this is a very, very important slide, because crowdfunding is not a free handout of money. Okay, there is absolutely work involved. You have to learn how crowdfunding works. You then have to work at making it work, and then it's important that you follow up with your backers and form that relationship with them. Ultimately, you are responsible. It's your campaign. It's your business. Crowdfunding very often is just like an ordinary traditional product launch, and it's a matter of having the right things in line, the right preparations, the right planning, and then the right execution of that plan. This guy here, I think, epitomizes a lot of people who come on to crowdfunding, because the reality is, if you do your homework, you'll find that even though there's some huge companies sit in the reward-based, and it's the same figures for right across the different models, around about 60% of all crowdfunding campaigns in the world today fail. I'll say that again, about 60% of all the crowdfunding campaigns, no matter what platform they're on, fail. So the majority don't actually ever be successfully funded. And the reason is, I think this guy epitomizes it. He's launched his crowdfunding campaign, and now he's got his beach shirt on, he's got a cup of coffee in his hand, he's got his flip-flops, he's sitting back, and it's like he's looking at the computer screen, waiting for the money to roll in from his campaign. And that is not how it works. Once you actually launch your campaign, that's when the real work starts in terms of building momentum during your campaign, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But I just want to get that reality check out there so that people are in no doubt that there's some work involved in making your campaign successful. I'll just take a pause there, Jeff, if there's any questions coming in there or anything you want to add to what I've said.
Yes, there's a couple of questions coming through that I'm replying to in the back end here. One of them, someone's asked, with LEOcrowd, how much does it cost for a project backers if the project doesn't reach its target? That's just a question from one of the people there.
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Currently, we'll be discussing our own individual platform, just at the end of the webinar. But most reward-based crowdfunding platforms, if the campaign is not successful, there are no charges. There are a few recently have started to charge a small admin fee at the front end if the project creator wants to have some extra help and support in preparing the campaign. But more often than not, it's a sort of all or nothing project. So if there's no success in the campaign, then usually there's no fees. So I hope that answers the question.
Perfect.
Anything else there, Jeff? Or you want to comment before we go on into the training?
No, that's all. I think it's all perfectly clear at the moment. I'll comment on some of the later parts, I think.
Excellent. Okay, just watching the time, 7:20. So let's keep this flowing. So there are really 4 stages of a crowdfunding project. And by all means, if you want to snap these slides, I don't mind at all. You can, that's the best way of usually regurgitating information. And by all means, take your notes or take pictures of the slides. There's 4 key stages in a crowdfunding project. And these are stages that you have to think about. You have to sit down and plan. You can't skip these if you want to have a successful campaign. Number 1, you have to have an idea, clearly, but that idea has to be very clear in your mind. You must know exactly what you're after. We'll discuss that in a minute. You then have to build your pitch, build your campaign, and this is a part that a lot of people try and skip. Because it's where you do have to sit down and think and plan and strategize, but you must actually take time to build your pitch. When you've done that, you then can go up to the top right, and you can see there, and you then have to have a period of shout out where you let people know that the campaign will be launching at a future date. So you're building your, like a pre-launch before you actually launch. Again, a part that a lot of people skip. They rush to get in the campaign or the platform and don't take the time to build momentum and interest before they launch. And then you have the actual launch itself. And again, there's some key points around that we're going to discuss. So on the idea, what we have on the idea is that you really have to have a clear project, a clear reason for the funds, a clear idea in your head. That can be something as innovative, a brand new product that's never been seen before. It could be creative. It doesn't really matter what it is. It just has to be something that is going to gain support from people who see it. Again, bear in your mind, a crowdfunding campaign, to be a success, must garner the support of a crowd, by definition. So think, will there be people out there willing to support you? If the answer is yes, then crowdfunding is probably for you. If the answer is no, then perhaps crowdfunding isn't the right source of funds for you. So there has to be an interest in a crowd. But you could also have a startup business. You could have a small business that's just a traditional business, but you need to raise more funds. Again, you can come to the platform and seek to raise funds. Another big part of the reward model is social causes or charity. Now, there's some platforms which specialize very much in people with health difficulties or raising money for operations, and they're very specialist platforms. We tend to stay away from those, as do most of the reward platforms. But social causes, reaching out to help other people in difficult circumstances, or following a natural disaster, or bringing a well to a village in Africa, helping children in Nepal after earthquakes. All those sort of things can very much fall under the social causes, and it can even be somewhere nearby. I remember a very relevant case just 2 Christmases ago, about 15 miles from my house in a small village. On Christmas Eve, the young couple with 2 children, their house burnt down on Christmas Eve, and someone quickly launched a crowdfunding campaign on a site and raised them thousands of pounds over a 24-hour period. Got them put up on a hotel, and they were able to sort of still enjoy Christmas given the circumstances. But that's a very tangible social cause where people will rally around and pledge and donate to a social cause. So there's all different categories. The larger platforms will have lots of different projects under each category. It obviously takes time to build that up. But really anything can be crowdfunded, providing it's legal and providing it has the potential to garner a crowd behind it. In life, everything starts with an idea. Anything you want to add to that one, Jeff?
Yeah, I think with the idea part, it's just important to also be enthusiastic and passionate about your idea as well. What we see with all crowdfunding projects is the more you believe in your idea, the more passionate about your idea you are, the more likely you're going to push it forward and see the projects right through from beginning to end. So if you've got an idea that you think is a bit of a flash in the pan, it's kind of a nice to have rather than a must have idea, then maybe it's not the right idea. If it's something you're deadly passionate about and you're going to get behind and happy to promote it, then you know you're on the right track with having the right idea.
Excellent. Yes, very, very good. Okay. In terms of building the campaign yet, I'm just thinking, Jeff, I'll bring you in on the last 2. You can do the shout on the launch. So I'll give you there's a minute warning for you. So on the build side, plan your campaign. It is important that you spend a little bit of time to actually plan and strategize. You've got to have a clear pathway to reach where you want to go. Be clear on who you are. You'll see there financials. How much money do you actually need? You don't want to ask for too much and fail. You don't want to ask for too little. So you need to really work out what is it that the amount that you actually need. What will the money be used for? The really, really important part of crowdfunding is saying and explaining what will the money actually be used for. Then you've got to look at your rewards. You've got to make sure you think what is in it for the backers. Those who put their hands in their pocket for £10, £20, £100, £500, whatever the pledge is, what is in it for them? And think in that way if you're going to produce some exciting rewards. And the video is huge. The video is 90% of your pitch, and it's really important that you have a look at how you do a really good video. Keep it short. It's got to be no more than 2.5 minutes long. You've got a really good pitch to cam at some point where you're asking for the money and explaining you want support. So you must have a persuasive story when it comes to your pitch, and the build is very, very important. I'll bring you in, Jeff, just for a change of voice, and you can do the next 2.
Okay, yeah. So shout is once you have your idea created into a project, so it's come from your mind, it's actually on the website now, people can view your project, and it's something that you're passionate about. The next part is to start shouting about your project. The idea of crowdfunding is to drive as many people to your projects as possible and to back you at a smaller amount rather than go to the big angel investors and get the full amount in one go. So for all of us, in order for us to be able to do that, we have to build a tribe. We have to actually go out there and find people who are interested in the type of projects that we're offering and who are interested and see value in the type of rewards that we're offering as well. So social media is a great way of, first of all, going out there and finding your tribe. So looking on groups, looking on forums, going to LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all these different places you'll find different demographics and psychographic profiles. The idea here is to start building up an avatar of who is your perfect client, who is it you would love to have your projects in front of. And then once you understand who that person is then to go out to them and start creating social buzz. We're not asking for anyone to back us at this stage. We're literally asking for people to just become aware of who we are and to get interested and excited about what we've got to offer. We want them to start sharing and commenting on all of our posts so it gets the social engagement spreading far and wide as we can before we actually go to launch, which is the next slide. You can click the next one. That'll work.
Just decided to freeze on me slightly.
Freeze, okay. So there we go, launch. So once we have created this social awareness and social buzz and we have people excited about our product, we then have our launch date. So the whole of crowdfunding really is like a business product launch. So in a product launch, you start to release information about your product or about your service in order to hit this specific launch date. So we can get everyone excited about the launch dates. And it's the same as if you ever see Apple phones, they always have their big events before the actual launch, where they unveil the new iPhone or the new MacBook Air or the new computers. The idea is to start getting people talking about it and to get them excited about it. And as soon as launch day hits, with Apple, you see people camping out outside their shops. And if you do a launch correctly, you'll hit at least the 10% to 30% of your funding on that launch day or within a couple of days after. This is where most people can really spike in their traffic and get a huge amount of backing for their projects up front if they've done the shout out correct and then they've actually launched the project correctly. You are thinking of crowdfunding as being a product launch, so this part is absolutely key. Then once you are actually in the launch stage, so the actual active campaign stage, it's then about creating momentum throughout the entire project. So here we are actually asking people to come and back our project. So we want to share our rewards with people. We want to share the value that's going to impact on their lives. We want to share the benefits of our projects to them and make it all about the audience, not so much about us, and try to get them to become early adopters and engage with our projects as much as possible. So throughout this whole launch phase is where we are creating excitement and enthusiasm and really trying to keep that momentum going. That momentum will dip down in the middle, but as we come to the end of the project as well, if we've got enough momentum, enough enthusiasm there, you'll find people start to back at the end of your projects as well, as soon as scarcity starts kicking in, and there's now become a timeline, there's an actual definitive end in sight for the project. People will start jumping on and start to back at the end as well. So the launch is actually when we finally get there and start launching it to your audience as well that you've pre-built.
Excellent, Jeff. Thank you very much for that. Jeff comes from an extensive marketing background. He's actually written some books, so we're glad to have him part of the team, and he can give a lot of really great advice to project creators on this preparing for the launch, the shout out, and then the actual launch itself. And we've had some really fantastic feedback from project creators for the support and help that we've been able to give them. So they're the sort of the four, what you would call the four main elements. I'm going to just skip through these next couple of very, very quickly, but we do have extensive trainings then within each one of those four. So the idea, the build, the shout, the launch, we break each one of those down into a separate training, just to really run through a couple of very brief slides. So if we're doing the build pitch, for instance, we would take you through our project creator flow, where the new project creator simply, when they're registered on our platform, they can then start to fill out their project, and it really couldn't be easier. Every single box has an info box beside it to explain and give some tips onto what to insert in the box, and then if that isn't enough, we've got a short video on every one of these steps, where you have about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, again, just highlighting the important parts as you put this part of the pitch together. So you do the basics about your pitch, how much you're looking for. Flexible funding is something that I'll explain just quickly. A lot of platforms have started this recently, where perhaps people have aimed perhaps too high. Maybe they've asked for £20,000 of a pitch. They've raised £16,000, but because it's all or nothing funding, then the campaign is a failure. It doesn't succeed. And for a lot of people, that's hard to take because they put time and effort, even a bit of money into the preparation. So a lot of platforms more recently have started flexible funding, where if you nominate flexible funding, that if you raise 50% of your funds, fund target, then they will still pay out that 50%, which means then, although you haven't reached your full target, still you've received some funds towards your goal. And most platforms will charge just a little bit extra on the platform for that. But again, you can look at that in more detail. Set your time. It's usually 30 to 40 days is the average campaign time for a reward-based model. Select your category, a good image, and again, the training would take you into how to actually do a really good or choose a good image. Again, the amount to raise and it's important, this first bit, because this is the bit that people see when they go on the Explore page and they're scrolling down through lots of projects. There needs to be something in the title, something in the image that attracts them to your campaign. When it comes to About You, again, we cover all the different details on what's important in that section. And then the story itself. We've talked about the video, it's massive. The project details, there's room to put up more documents, but you again emphasizing you must explain clearly as to why you need the funds. In this case, Greg Fote, well-known jazz musician, he's had a very significant hit back in 2011, big sort of worldwide backing, but at the bottom he clearly has the funds raised from this crowdfunding campaign will enable us to record and produce the album. So it's very clear as to what he needs the money for, and that's always important. Then you do your rewards, and we're having time tonight on the webinar to do this in detail, but you'll be able to go on to our training suite and have a look at this, but you've got to think about rewards that are attractive, that will encourage people to pledge. And we'll start off with some small ones just for support, and then we'll go up to some bigger ones where they're limited edition ones, but you've got to have a range of rewards to attract a range of different people, and that's obviously important. Think of things like, is the product country specific? It might be there be some shipping issues to some markets, so be aware of things like that when you're thinking about your rewards. Very important that I mentioned quickly about the KYC. I'm often asked, well, how do you vet projects? We have a very clear written down vetting project process. Project creators must provide, first of all, their sort of confirmation emails to actually register on the site, a mobile phone number, but then we also demand to see photo verification and address verification. So really the same standard of opening a bank account somewhere is the same standard that we apply to a project creator who's actually coming onto our site. Secondly, we then look at the actual project. So we don't allow projects to be launched on the platform until we've authorized them. We want to see, have they thought it through, is it realistic, and we're not going to let projects on the platform that are unlikely to be successful for whatever reason. So we've kind of got the two ways of making sure that we vet the projects, but listen, the reality is that people out there have a mindset sometimes of trying to scam things and trying to always look for the easy option. So there have been occasions in reward-based crowdfunding where people have come on, presented a plausible business plan, and gathered some money, and then have failed to produce the rewards. So it does happen sometimes, but we try and minimize that by making sure that everyone is KYC'd and all the projects vetted. So really just coming to the end of the webinar, although we've talked a lot tonight about preparation and planning and making sure you do all these steps before you launch, I think this is a very appropriate quote. Reid Hoffman, co-founder of LinkedIn, and he said, if you're not embarrassed by your first version of your product, you've launched too late. And so what we're saying is, yes, take time to prepare, but don't miss the window, if you like, of launching something by waiting for it to be perfect, to have every I dotted, every T crossed in the pitch. At some point, you got to press the button and go live. So just get that balance. Pledge curve is something that is very, very, very important, particularly for those who are either in the middle of a campaign. I know there are some people on the webinar tonight who have already launched with us, and they just offer some more tips of how to make their campaign a success. It's very important to understand the pledge curve, because if we say along the bottom is a time frame of, say, 4 weeks, around about 30 days, and then on the left-hand side, you see pledging activity, that's the amount of money pledged. What happens with most projects is there's a big push, big momentum in the first week. And that's especially true if there's been a good shout-out, if there's been a good plan and a pre-launch in place, that when you actually go live, there'll be interest from all those you've talked to in the previous weeks. And a lot of projects will get to 25–30% within their first week. And then there will be a lull, almost without fail. There's a bit of a lull in the middle 2 weeks. There isn't the same momentum, there isn't the same drive of people coming on. There'll be some, but sometimes project creators then get discouraged. And they're like, oh, this isn't going to work. I'm 2 weeks in and I'm only at 40%, or only at 50%. And sometimes they get so discouraged that they take their foot off the gas. And that's a huge mistake, because we know from, for instance, attending the European Crowdfunding Network convention there in Paris just in November there, they were discussing how that if a project gets to about 60% by coming into its last week, then it has a huge chance of being successful. The last week seems to be when the magic of crowdfunding happens, where people's own tribes and then the platform tribe gets on to make the campaign a success. So don't be discouraged if you're in the middle of a campaign and the pledges aren't rolling in and you're only week 1 or 2. Get off to a good start, be prepared for a little bit of a lull, and then get ready for a big push in the last week, and that's very, very normal in the industry. So just in conclusion, just very quickly about ourselves and LEOcrowd. We are a reward-based company. The man behind LEOcrowd is a guy called Dan Anderson. Currently lives near Oxford in the United Kingdom. Has had extensive business interests around the world. Serial entrepreneur with a number of huge successes in the past, corporate training and direct selling. And he's actually formed really a ecosystem of companies that are interdependent, that all sort of feed off each other. And you can see there we've got our own digital currency, which is called LEOcoin. There's an exchange in the marketplace to go with that. We've actually got our own branded cafe in China. We do a lot of charity work in different parts of the world. We've got our own property investment company. So we've got this group of companies that sit behind the main company, Leo, which is entrepreneur online training. It's e-webinars, live seminars, e-learning, and really Dan's passion is to educate entrepreneurs, and that's really what it drives him as a businessman. And LEOcrowd really was, and crowdfunding was really the next logical step. And I know someone asked earlier, raised their hand and said, what makes LEOcrowd different? And that's a really good question, because there are thousands of crowdfunding platforms out there in the world today. Some very few actually very, very successful, and a lot that are losing money, and it's difficult to get that momentum going in this industry. So what makes us different than a lot of ones out there? Well, I think there are 3 main things. Number one, we already have an existing global footprint through our parent company, Leo. They have about 140,000 members around the world who have purchased entrepreneurship training and personal development products in around about 120 countries. So we can take someone's project and we can email that to a global audience, which immediately gives us a footprint that most young companies in this industry just don't have. We believe in education and support. This industry will grow when more and more business people understand it and are educated into how to make it work. So we're about providing education. We've got a whole suite of education videos, but we also provide support, and this is very important. And we've had so many people have come to us in recent months who have looked at other platforms, but then have come to us and said, look, you know, you're one of the few companies that actually emailed us personally rather than just being on a generic email coming from a Infusionsoft or a Salesforce type CRM system. We're on the end of a phone. We arrange Skype calls. We allow. We're headquartered in London. We have people who come in and meet us face to face. So we provide real, tangible support to the project creator. I know that's made a real difference to a lot of the project creators, rather than just being a numbers game on some big platforms where they just don't have the time to ring people individually and work with them. So that's the second thing that's very important. Thirdly, digital currency. We believe this is a really big value point that we bring to the industry. First, there's very few companies that allow digital currency as part of the pledge. We are very much pioneering this, but we are ahead of the curve. Digital currency, Bitcoin, if that rings a bell with some people, you know, it is absolutely becoming the mainstream currency. You know, the EU, the US, even China now recognize it as a proper mainstream currency, just the same as fiat. And this is a huge trend because it opens up a whole new currency to crowdfunding. We actually have our own LEOcoin as part of our group, and we've got members around the world who hold LEOcoin, and they're willing to come on and pledge on the platform using that currency. So there are three ways I think that we're different than other platforms, and these are certainly things that the feedback we're getting from project creators as to why they're choosing us over some others. As I say, there's an extensive video library that you can go on when you've logged in. You just go up to the top right-hand side to your dashboard, and there's all videos on how to get KYC'd and how to create your project and how to build your tribe online. There's then detailed ones on raising capital and strategy and a good video. All the things you need when you're building a campaign is all there in the back end. So just to review then, I think the important thing to emphasize tonight is you have to take responsibility. It's your campaign. Crowdfunding is a facilitator, but at the end of the day, it's your campaign, it's your business, it's your project, it's your idea. So you have to educate yourself as to how this industry works, and we provide that through our e-learning videos. Some of the key points is your main image and your title that go on the platform is very important. You want to make yourself different and attractive on a page with lots of other projects. Your video is absolutely vital. Make sure you get a really good video, and that will be a huge step forward to having a successful project. Your project description, how you describe it, why you want the money, and then of course your rewards. What's in it? Why will people feel they want to pledge money to you? Because of what they're getting in return. What's the tangible value to them? But above all, be enthusiastic. You've got to build momentum. Crowdfunding, the reason it's usually 30-40 days. If it goes longer than that, it's hard to keep that momentum. And for a crowdfunding campaign to work, there has to be just a real enthusiasm. There's got to be momentum where you're just almost in the zone and you're reaching out to people, let people know, and then you head into the last week and you're letting people know, listen, 7 days to go, we need your support. 6 days to go, we need your support. 48 hours, we need your support. And you're just building that. If you don't have that enthusiasm, it's very difficult for backers to get excited by what you have. So last slide, really, just the next steps for those on the webinar. If you haven't already, sign up to LEOcrowd, have a look at our platform, have a look at what we have to offer, go and look at your training stuff. Once you've done that, then prepare your pitch if you have a project. Go through the e-course and make sure you've looked at all the elements. When you have your story, you've got your video ready, obviously you already reached out to your tribe, then you can see point 3, it's then time to launch. And then we're here to help and support you to try and make your campaign a success. And lastly, one of the benefits of our community is that we're trying to create a collaborative hub. We're trying to create a situation where we have lots of people on our platform that can help the startup entrepreneur business. I think that's going to be something that you hear a lot more about going forward. So thank you very much for your time. We've actually gone just a little bit longer than normal, but we just wanted to really get into some of that detailed training I like getting into the nuts and bolts. I don't like broad brushes when it comes to training. I know when I attend webinars, as I've done many over the years, I want to really get down to the nuts and bolts of what's important. So hopefully we've covered that tonight for you. If there's any burning questions, Jeff, we can take them. We don't want to necessarily prolong the call. Is there anything you need to open up to the everybody, or can it be answered just by yourself individually?
Yeah, I've been dealing with a lot of questions in the background here, so it's absolutely fine.
Okay, fantastic. So with that, I will say thank you very much for your time. We do appreciate you taking the time. I can say actually, surprisingly, we've had a very, very, very little drop-off from our initial attendees at the start, which is fantastic. It shows that our information is relevant and that people are getting value out of our call. So we really do appreciate that. You can contact us on support@leocrowd.com, and you can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those good old-fashioned ways of reaching out. But by all means, if you have any questions, get in touch with us. We're here to help. We're here to support. And as I say every week, ending the call, your success is our success. So thank you very much, and I wish you a really good rest of the day, whatever part of the world you're in. All the best.